You know, I'm so honored and very humbled to receive an award. Any award, really, but, but especially one that bears Gail Warden's name. Throughout my career, Gail has been an icon of our profession, somebody we all aspire to emulate, who embodied the characteristics of leadership that have come to define what it means to be a leader, and who helped to create a healthcare delivery organization, the Henry Ford Health System, that in so many respects is considered exemplary and trend-setting. Thank you, Gail, and thank you to the National Center and all of its leaders. I also want to share that it is high praise indeed to be in the company of some of the nation's stalwarts of healthcare leadership, the previous recipients of this award, people like Chris Castle and Glenn Steele, both of whom I had the pleasure to work with at the University of Chicago, and John Bluford, who is here this evening, who I had the good fortune to work with on the Missouri Hospital Association Board of Trustees. I want to shout out all of my friends and colleagues at BJC Healthcare who are here en masse this evening. They deserve much of the credit for the recognition that I am receiving. And a shout out to my friend from the BJC Collaborative, Ed Curtis, thank you for being here. And to my friend from the Washington University School of Medicine, David Perlmutter. David, I almost forgot your last name. I have worked alongside all of you for the better part of 2 decades. We have mentored each other, we have solved many problems together, and we have led together. A special thank you to Rich Lakewig, BJC's next and likely best CEO ever. As some of you in the room know, once upon a time I helped to initiate the fellowship at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. It is very meaningful for me that Ron Peterson, the long-serving and greatly esteemed leader of the Johns Hopkins Hospital and Health System, is here this evening. When I look at you, Ron, not only do I see one of my first role models in hospital administration, you also conjure up for me the memories I hold dear of our earliest mentors, Bob Heisel and Ed Halley. Ron, thank you so much for being here this evening and for bringing Bob and Ed with you. The very first cohort of the Johns Hopkins Administrative Fellows is also here this evening, Joan Magruder and Dennis Murphy. Dennis is now the CEO of IU Health, and Joan is now a BJC Group President, having served as president of both BJC's largest community hospital and BJC's only children's hospital. Karen Kent was in the second cohort of Hopkins Fellows and is here this evening. Karen is married to Bill Kent, who came to Hopkins straight out of the Massachusetts General Hospital Fellowship and is now the CEO at Lehigh Valley Hospital. And even though it isn't on my resume, I was the chauffeur who drove Bill and Karen from their wedding to their reception. I heard that. Okay. And to all of you who worked with me at Mass General, Johns Hopkins, the University of Chicago, and at BJC, it is hard to express just how grateful I am for the time we have shared. And for those of you who have worked with me in more than one of those places, Bob Cannon joins with Joan and Dennis in that crowd, a special salute. A heartfelt thank to Rick Pollack here tonight with Diane. Diane, thank you for marrying Rick. And to Daryl Kirch, Atul Grover, and to Herb Kuhn. Rick, Daryl, Atul, and Herb champion the work of America's hospitals and medical schools and have been my teachers and mentors on all matters of healthcare policy that affect the places where I have worked. Last and certainly not least, I want to acknowledge Carol, Don, Corey, Joe, and Susan. Corey and Joe are our dear friends here this evening. Don is the inspiration for the next stage of my life's work as a ski bum. Carol is my sister, and we have looked after each other for the better part of 50 years. And Susan, we just keep going and going and going. And as long as we go there together, I will be in the place where I want to be. I love you all. Now, when I was notified of this wonderful recognition, I was informed that I would be expected to say a few words about leadership, healthcare leadership in particular. And just as I received this assignment, the United States Congress was taking up yet another attempt to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. At that stage of this political drama, John McCain did something that surprised most people inside and outside of Washington. He got in the way. He believed that the majority of his fellow Republicans in the United States Senate were about to do something wrong. Skinny repeal, they called it, and he stopped it from happening. It was a difficult decision. It made him very unpopular with rank-and-file conservatives and with the President of the United States, and he did it anyway. The leadership technique on display that evening, demonstrated by Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and John McCain of Arizona, was getting in the way. Standing up and saying the opposite of what people on your team literally are shouting at you. Has that ever happened to you? Have you gotten in the way? Have you cast the deciding vote? Were the stakes ever that high? Would you have had the courage of conviction to take that kind of heat from friends, associates, the public, and everybody else who would second guess your decision? When does a healthcare leader need to get in the way or swim against the tide? At the places where I have worked, the tide always seems to be so strong. To be sure, it always flows in the direction of improving clinical quality and patient safety and patient outcomes. And the current has also been strong to obtain the latest technology, employ the latest and often the most expensive therapies, and the next generation medicines. We gotta have, you fill in the blank, we gotta have a lithotripter, a gamma knife, a linear accelerator, a proton beam. Bob, my favorite, we gotta have private rooms. Operating rooms are now supersized to accommodate more equipment. LDRPs are now the size of a small apartment. And of course, there are the trends of the moment. Today, that seems to be urgent care and retail medicine, and soon, cures delivered by Amazon to your door during whatever 2-hour window you choose. These tides of change and progress have produced real and tangible benefits for the American people. Joint replacement surgery adds quality to human life. Cardiac implants and statins prolong human life. Advanced chemotherapy and radiation therapy have taken the immediacy, if not the inevitability, of death out of a cancer diagnosis. And of course, organ transplants are almost commonplace, no longer newsworthy when they happen. And as we sit here this evening, Mary Jane, the tide of spending America's national income on healthcare seems as strong as ever. What I think I know after 35 years of doing this is that Americans seemingly have an insatiable appetite to consume healthcare services. Maybe we have a lower pain tolerance than the people in Canada. Maybe we have a lower waiting in the queue tolerance than the people in Great Britain. Factually, we have a higher poverty rate than almost every other developed economy in the world. And while we obsess about the overutilization of healthcare services, here in America, we also like to talk about individual freedom. And there is something about the notion of freedom that is incongruous with the notion of rationing. America has a healthcare affordability crisis, steeped in a political quagmire that seems almost inescapable. The kind of leadership that will be required to alter the tides of American healthcare policies that affect affordability will involve getting in the way. Now, as I wind down this chapter of my life's journey, I'm getting a little nostalgic, and I think about the often asked question that comes up when you meet new people. So what do you do for a living? It was always uncomfortable for me when a person I had just met learns that I have a title of president or CEO or even executive. But I am always proud to tell people that I am a hospital administrator. And not because I think so highly of what an administrator does. It is because I think so highly of what a hospital does. When people know something is seriously wrong, but they don't know what it is, they go to a hospital. In times of illness and injury and emergency, people go to a hospital. A hospital is not a building made up of bricks and mortar. It is an always there aggregation of highly skilled and compassionate healthcare professionals who take care of other people in time of need. And they take care of all people, rich and poor, all races and ethnicities, those with insurance and those without. So back to the question I asked you earlier. When does a healthcare leader need to get in the way? As leaders, each of you will need to decide for yourselves what circumstances will compel you to get in the way. John McCain believed that skinny repeal was such a circumstance. Here are a few of my personal favorites, probably all of which have been memorized by the people at BJC. The next time somebody characterizes a hospital as just a hotel for sick people, diminishing the important work of all the people who work there, we need to get in the way and advance the public's understanding of what it is that hospitals do. Atul Grover, you'll like this one. The next time somebody describes a hospital with a high readmission rate as a bad apple, completely ignoring the effect of social and demographic factors on hospitalization rates, we need to work on lowering readmission rates, but we need to get in the way of the financial penalties that disproportionately fall on the nation's safety net hospitals. The next time somebody advises us to take the money we spend in hospitals and spend it on wellness and prevention and primary care, we need to also talk about the biology of longevity, genetics, social determinants of health status, and American lifestyle behaviors, and we should get in the way of policy decisions that would leave insufficient resources to care for those people who will inevitably need the services of a hospital. The next time a politician reminds us that people in other countries live longer and spend less on health care, we should get in the way and remind them that America has among the highest poverty rates in the developed country world, the highest infant mortality rates, and the highest homicide rates, and that as a percentage of GDP, America spends much less on the income, food, and housing supports that lift people out of poverty. And the next time our own people tell us that we can't make hospital care better and safer without spending more money, we have to get in the way of spending more money and still push to make medicine better and safer.